Greetings and welcome to a very special edition of ALN Thursday at 3. We are going to reflect a little bit on our 10-year history that we accomplished by surviving through 2023. But first, we like to always thank our organizational members, Onuma Inc., Definitive Logic, which is a Mantech company, ABS Quality Evaluations, CGI and Jacobs, and all of our member organizations. We are very grateful not only for the financial support, but the intellectual support and the willingness to be sharing information through the network of leaders that we've established over 10 years. And so we were very grateful for that membership. And today we're going to be talking with Jim Dieter, ALN CEO, chairman of the board, and founder of the ALN. We're going to talk a little bit about what we've done in the past 10 years. And then we're going to say that we don't rest on our laurels, and we're going to start talking about an event on January 10th at the National Academy of Sciences that is co-facilitated with the National Academy's Federal Facility Council and features speakers from the Government Accountability Office and federal agencies and ALN members. So, Jim Dieter, how you doing 10 years on?
I'm older.
Happened to all of us.
That's the good news, right?
Yeah, that have been lucky enough to do this, because I've been going over some pictures from the past, and not everyone is still here with us. It's 10 years is a long time. So first of all, congratulations on that.
Well, thanks, and in large part, it's thanks to you in large part, but yes.
Well, I always say this is the best team I've ever played with. This is a great group of people who get the idea about leadership and how leadership needs to govern the ship, to steer the ship. And that's what we're talking about, is how to steer the ship. It's not so much about fooling with the rudder, which is real important. your engine has to run and everything, but we're talking about the overview, direction and culture and principles. And I see Art Kurland chimed in with congratulations. Thank you, Art. Very nice of you. And what was your goal for the organization when you started?
Well, we started talking about it as part of the U.S. Technical Advisory Group, U.S. TAG, to TC 251, price of $55,000. And as I was approaching publishing the 2014 versions of the document, we realized that we really wanted to promote asset management, ISO 55000, in the United States, and that a standards group really wasn't the place to do that. You can do a little bit, but really wanted to expand it and to reach out. I think my most memorable, or my main memory is we were saying in 2014 and 2013 that if we got one story on the front page of Bloomberg or the Wall Street Journal, we don't even have pages anymore. That just shows you what happens. But if we got one story on the front page about asset management, that would be awesome. Well, we have far exceeded that. And now there's really not any self-respecting executive, whether in for-profit or government or not-for-profits, that doesn't know what asset management means and has some idea of what's involved in it. So I think, that part has been enormously successful. And I think the ALN, can rightly take, ownership of some of that success. And certainly lots and lots of other factors, other associations, and et cetera.
Well, that's been part of what the ALN has always been about from the very beginning, is to not only network among the members, organizations and the leaders, but other associations also. And right from the very start, we have appreciated interest and support from the National Property Managers Association. And we have done excellent programs with the Government Finance Officers Association. We have hosted the American Society of Civil Engineers a couple times as they provide their report card report to our audience. And IAM, we wrote a paper with, and with the Asset Management Council of Australia. We've been doing a highly successful web program quarterly for the past couple of years, and we've had over 320 people on a web call earlier this year with the Asset Management Council.
I got to share my Government Financial Officers Association story that I recently moved to Woodstock, Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley, and I was in the county offices today, buying Christmas presents, as it turned out. But they're proudly displayed in the lobby of their offices were 3 plaques for budgeting and financial reporting excellence presented to them and renewed on an annual basis by the GFOA, the Government Financial Officers Association. I was impressed. That's good.
That was very good. So the first event was in 2013. It was at the Roslyn, not the Holiday Inn, which a hotel in Roslyn.
Holiday Inn.
It was the Holiday Inn. And there were over 100 people. It was very well attended. The room was full. It was great. And then the next year.
Oh, well, don't jump by that. That's where in the middle of this, all of a sudden there's this guy in the audience that from Chicago. And I said, how did he guy from Chicago get here? And it turned out Jack Dempsey had told him he should come. And he was going, ooh, 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 ooh.
Nobody was asking questions, so I was asking questions.
You were, Mike. That was good. That was good. Anyhow, go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right. So I was very happy. I'd known Jack Dempsey for more than a decade. And when he told me about the Asset Leadership Network meeting in Washington, D.C. in 10 days, I hung up the phone with him and I booked myself a ticket because I knew that this was the organization. I could tell. It's focused on leadership. The standard for addressing assets of any type was clear. I wouldn't say concise. There's repetition in it, but it was super clear and it hit all the right points. And I will say about ISO 55001 and the Asset Leadership Network, I think we sort of focused on the first couple of to-do items in the list for the first 10 years. Mission focus, the strategic asset management plan shall align with your organizational objectives. And the second one being involve all relevant stakeholders. And those 2 items, I think, really can set a culture straight. As if you've got.
Can I go down a short rabbit hole?
Sure.
So we started out trying to figure out a name for this organization. And, words like, asset seemed like it needed to be in there. Management seemed like to be in there. And institute seemed like needed to be in there. But those words were taken in various ways. And we thought, well, we're not an institute. It's more like a network of connection of connections. So that seemed good. And then we really hit on that. Even with that, it was hard to find a name that wasn't used. And then we hit on leadership. We thought, well, what we're really talking about is leadership, not just the management part, which goes to what Mike was saying. And we hit on Asset Leadership Network, and I think it's the perfect name for the organization.
Yes.
And tying that to ISO documents, in my view, is if you read Simon Sinek and his getting to why, with the why, the how, and the what, you could think of 55,001 as the how, right? And you can think of 55,000 as and two as the what. How do you, so what do you actually have to do? What are the things you have to do? One is it tells you what you have to do, and two tells you how to do it. But my focus in the development, as the head of the U.S. TAG, and then specifically as a work group member, was always on ISO 55,000. And I might not have been using these terms at that time, but the reason I think 55,000 is very important, especially in the United States, is because it's about the why. As we approach the revision, which is underway and nearing completion, I really focused on the principles. They were called fundamentals in 55. In the 2014 version, they're going to be principles, or perhaps principles and outcomes this time. And we've added a couple up to 6. It should be 7 or 8. But it really gets down to the why are you doing this, and that you can do asset management to considerable success, but limited. Coming from a middle management perspective, there's lots of good things to do using the standard. I mean, you just can't go wrong doing that stuff, whether you get certified or not. It's going to be good. But the real power of it lies in the ideas in 55,000, which is, why are we doing this from an organizational perspective? It isn't about one pump or one system. It's really looking at all of your assets. And although I don't believe anybody's really doing that, they're really the broad perspective of assets, whether you own them or not, whether you lease them, whether you own them, or whether it's the road outside your building that you have to drive on. They're all assets of your organization. And there's just enormous opportunity to improve the organization and how it's run and the outcomes that are achieved, and can be done in a very ESG sensitive way by taking that approach.
What are some of those principles? Since you brought them up, let's have a principle discussion, because I think that really supports what we want to do in this. It's not just talk about our past, but what we're going forward with. And we're going to be very principled in 2024.
Okay. Well, the original 4 were lava, right? LAVA. So it was, you're putting me to a memory test.
Leadership.
Leadership is easy. I mean, I should question you to see if you know what they are.
Alignment.
Alignment. Yeah, that's good.
Value.
Value.
I'm leaving one for you. But those are the types of things that leaders have to establish at their organization.
Yep.
And I'm glad there are more principles there, and I'm glad that we're going to be focusing on that.
And so as a result of some of those discussions with AMC folks in Australia, it really got tuned into adaptability as being one of those. And that is, so far, has made the cut. So that's one. And another is sustainability, which has caused all kinds of discussion, because people think you're trying to tell them that they need to, be a tree hugger to practice sustainability. And really, sustainability in the largest sense is, making sure that whatever you're doing, the organization in this case, is going to continue to operate and be viable. You can take it a lot of different directions. And in general, more broadly, the principles aren't you need to do this. Those would be requirements, and they're in 55,001. The principles are these are things you need to think about. You need to think about it. The one that I would add is equity.
Yes.
But so far that hasn't made the cut. We haven't given up on it yet, but certainly when we talk about principles, I don't know how we can talk about, after the conversations we've had with Mark Morial and Governor O'Malley and others, that how you could not consider equity to be, a huge factor, whether it's public or private sector.
So those are two highlights from our 10-year history. We've had Mark Morial, who's president of the National Urban League, and Governor O'Malley, Martin O'Malley, who was also the mayor of Maryland before he became governor, mayor of Baltimore. Thank you, Jim. Before becoming governor. And he talked with us a couple times. He saw the value of coming back and getting the message out to us a few times. So we really appreciate that. And
can I just tell the one quick story on that?
Please.
I mean, one that really hit me from Mark Morial, and Governor O'Malley had great stories as well. But think of he was the mayor of New Orleans at the time of Katrina, and when you're rebuilding, so now you have money and you'll have needs. Do you spend the money for roads or dikes or whatever? Do you spend it in the area of greatest need or in the area where people have paid the most in taxes? And the property values are the highest. And as everybody that thinks about that knows that it was a big discussion and continues to be a discussion. So equity as a principle wouldn't tell you what the answer should be, but I know what I think the answer should be, but that's me. But it means how can you make such decisions without considering equity and what's involved?
That's actually an excellent highlight, Jim. So Mark Morial was talking about the common sense approach to asset management when he was a governor or the mayor of New Orleans. Chris Silkey, who is the asset manager for Parks and Recreation in Portland, Oregon, did a systematic approach that was guided by the ISO standard to help decide where to spend monies on public parks. And there were parks in lower tax districts that needed help. And they were able to, using a consensus approach, determine together that they were going to fix up the parks in the lower tax areas before they started putting more bells and whistles on the parks in the high tax districts. So we've got both the theoretical and the practical application. I'm glad you brought that one up.
Pictures, Mike. We want pictures.
All right, pictures. Okay, I was going to do more yabbering, but we'll go to some of the pictures. So we've already seen that. Let's go over here. And which one do I want to start with? Here is Jim Dieter with Norman Dong. We had the head of the GSA Public Building Commissioner come and speak, and not just Norman Dong. When Dan Matthews was PBS Commissioner, he spoke, and we have invited Elliot Domes, who is the current PBS Commissioner, to speak, give a keynote on January 10th. Haven't heard back yet from him, but we've got a strong connection and relationship there. Here's that event. Everybody's interested. Let's look at some other sets of pictures. I think a big deal was when Jack Dempsey used his connection and got us into the National Academies, and forever grateful to Jack for that. and Cameron Oskbig, who is the head of the National Academy's Board on Infrastructure and Constructed Environment, and the Federal Facility Council has said that we are in alignment with what they're trying to achieve. What an honor that is. And so we've had some wonderful events there where we say dramatic things like data is an asset. Back in 2016, when we were saying that, that was kind of radical. Now everybody understands that and acts accordingly. What else?
There's a picture of Kimon there in front of the podium of the National Academy of Sciences. I have to tell you, that was one of the thrills of my life, was to be standing there on the stage at the National Academy of Sciences and talking about asset management.
Now, this room that is shown now wasn't there when Einstein spoke at the National Academy of Sciences, but Einstein spoke at the National Academy of Sciences, and we're having events there. So again, that's why we're forever grateful to Jack Dempsey and Cameron Oskvig. And then we've had, in addition to Mark Morial and Governor O'Malley, Ben McAdams was a representative for the Salt Lake City area, and he had been mayor of Salt Lake City County. They have mayors in their counties, and he provided some great insight. This is from 2020, when so many of our events were online and we don't have the crowd shots. And I should have a picture of Admiral Allen. Admiral Thad Allen is an American hero who was the Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard, and he has spoken both live and on the web for us. And he liked what we were doing so much that he invited Jim, Jack Kelly, and myself to lunch at his country club. I should have a picture of him, but since this is a Christmas picture, let's have some of the Christmas lights from Admiral Allen's country club.
Admiral Allen provided one of my favorite quotes from ALNs from the last decade, when he said one of his principles has always been transparency creates self-correcting behavior. And boy, I've thought of those words a lot of times in different environments.
Okay, and going back to equity, when I had my screen shared, I didn't see Cecilia. Thank you for providing some comments about equity, and that people should look at our equity template. One of the things that we've done over the 10 years is write white papers and other types of papers, and we've provided transition documents to a couple of new presidential administrations. And the one that we wrote for the Biden administration on their incoming, I think, influenced their approach to equity. And thank you, Cecilia, for pointing that out, and how that advancing equity through asset management influenced the Portland Parks policy, not just the parks, the whole city's asset management policy, which could be read as an equity policy also. That's how much they thought equity should be a part of asset management. So points a lot to the things that we've achieved. And one thing that I do want to highlight here is, again, through the National Academies and Jack Dempsey's understanding of how Washington, D.C. works, Senator Carper requested the Government Accountability Office report on federal property asset management. And that 1957 report that came out of that changed the federal government. We'd had some people from the federal agencies attend before that report, but after that report, federal agencies showed up in large numbers and were reporting on their asset management activities. 1957 gave a cover, gave rationale for people to move in this direction strong to bring benefits to their agency.
So that report was written in 1957?
That was the name of the report. It came out in 2018. Thank you for that clarification. And that's a perfect segue into us looking forward. So the author of that report from the U.S. Government Accountability Office was Amelia Secoy, who is not with the U.S. Government Accountability Office anymore. She is now a sole practitioner member of the Asset Leadership Network, and it was her idea to combine the National Academy's Strategies to Renew Federal Facilities report and reporting on a GAO deferred maintenance report and other reports. So that's what January 10th is going to be focused on, is how the reporting from the U.S. Government Accountability Office shows that deferred maintenance is an issue, and how the National Academy's report shows that there is a solution set to that deferred maintenance set of issues. As a leadership organization, we are not talking about touching assets. So when we're talking about deferred maintenance, we're not saying your torque is wrong or you don't have your filters changed enough. When we talk about deferred maintenance, we say things like the U.S. Department of State had $3 billion in deferred maintenance. How are they going to deal with it? A high-level plan needs to be addressed. It's not about touching filters and getting torques.
No, that's not important.
That's very important, but it's not what we're talking about. And
by the way, Amelia is with us today, so thanks, Amelia, for all that.
yes, and Amelia, feel free to let us know if you want to join, and we can make you a panelist. Then we're also going to be inviting the federal agencies that are listed in the report. So we've got the Department of Interior's Bureau of Reclamation, which has an excellent story about how they got their deferred maintenance ducks in a row. They had a plan, a 5-year plan for addressing all their deferred maintenance. They were good asset managers. When the infrastructure bill was being generated, they were asked to submit information about what they would want funding. They submitted their asset management, strategic asset management plan, and the whole document was put into the bill. And they got 3 of the 5 years funded for their deferred maintenance because they had their ducks in a row, because they took an asset leadership approach. That's the types of impact that we're talking about, that we're looking forward to continuing to have in the next 10 years.
We haven't said National Asset Leadership Strategy yet.
That was a key document. I still remember the moment. We had finished an event at the U.S. Capitol Building Conference Center, the Senate Conference Center, and it was a huge success. And we're walking up on Capitol Hill, and Jim says, Mike, what do you think about for next year? We do a national asset leadership strategy that shows the nation how it should be thinking about all of its assets. And I said, Jim, that's exactly what we should be doing for the next year.
It's good.
And what that does was create a framework for our federal government to understand how to approach the assets as an entire country, as opposed to the fleet of Department of Homeland Security. That's segmented view. The National Asset Leadership Strategy looks at the entire picture of all of the assets.
So just to show some of the connectivity, really that document could be viewed as just a strategic asset management plan for the country.
That was a good one. And then what we set up with member of the US TAG is a website to allow people to register that they're working on their asset management in a structured way, whether they're certified or not. That's an important global document also.
We haven't mentioned that, Mike mentioned briefly the ASCE, the American Society of Civil Engineers, report card that they come out with on a regular, every few years. And David Totman, who's one of our senior fellows, is also the ASCE lead for asset management. And we were able to provide thoughts and input directly and indirectly through David for the ASCE's effort to advocate for asset management in the US government as the infrastructure bills were being discussed and formulated. So those words are actually in there. Not as much as we'd like, probably, but the words are in there.
So I don't want to go on too much past the half hour here, but related to the ALN and how we were focused, how I took a focus on aligning your strategic asset management plan with your organizational objectives, your mission, and the second item in the list, involve all relevant stakeholders. I think what really distinguishes the Asset Leadership Network now is the last item on the list, which is continual improvement. And basically, what we want to do is reach out to leaders who are interested in continual improvement. That's it. And if you are a leader and you are interested in continual improvement, we believe that a structured approach, a governance approach to asset management can really help you. And there are many ways to approach that. The ISO documents are great. The United Nations has a approach that is as good or better than the ISO documents. The New York Academy of Sciences has a document for cities that want to wrestle with this very challenging problem of dealing with all their assets in a unified manner. And ASTM, Marty Rowland, ALN Senior Fellow, has a standard for looking at what a city needs to effectively serve the citizens. What assets does a city need? So continual improvement, but
I just wanted to mention that my current intrigue is taking the categories Marty has come up with for that document for what a city should be providing and changing the perspective to what should we as citizens, as individuals, what should we be expecting, or how can we compare one place to another in terms of the infrastructure provided? And my favorite quote, perhaps, is assets are the stage upon which we lead our lives. And it's important to us. It's important to all of us in organizations and individually.
So that's a good thing to be focused on for next year and the following decade and our next 10 years of existence. And we thank you all for attending this event. Your consistent support is much appreciated. And Jim, thank you for your vision and direction. It's been a great 10 years. I'm very satisfied very, soulfully satisfied with what we've achieved. And I'm reared up to achieve even more.
Sounds good. Maybe the one thing we haven't stressed is the ALN isn't Mike, it's not me, it's everybody that's willing to contribute. And I always say contribute rather than participate. There's lots of opportunities to contribute and leverage the ALN or to advance the various items we're working on. And the reason we've gotten to where we are today is all the various people Mike mentioned, the people attending today, and the new people that will come forward as we go forward in the coming years. So thanks.
Yes, and thank you to our organizational members of all types. Without all of these organizational members, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. And we're so excited to be starting 2024 at the National Academy of Sciences. So if you can, if you're in the DC area, please join us. And if you want to get there, we will provide coffee and lunch. And we've got other activities planned also. So feel free to reach out and see if you want to contribute to those activities. Thank you, Jim. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah, happy holidays too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one, Cecilia. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye for now.